Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Tuesday, the 13th of February, comes to you from London. And we start by looking at the dollar. Dollar falling back quite sharply this morning. If we see here, just coming back through the cloud, and that's just really reflecting the budgetary announcements in the US and expansionary sort of policies. So we are just seeing the dollar coming off in reaction to that. So dollar turning bearish short term. And the medium and long-term charts, of course, are bearish. So that means the euro is turning bullish against the dollar. Japanese yen, we're seeing the dollar sinking quite a lot lower here. That weaker dollar really coming through, and the sterling rising slightly, but still bearish against the dollar. So in effect, sterling is even more bearish in the short term. On the euro, we're seeing sterling just teetering along the edge here. If we fall really below this 112 level, then we activate this downside target to 107. That's 4% downside. Looking at sterling against the Swiss franc, we see here it's still bearish below the cloud with downside targets. And against the Australian dollar, up slightly, but still bearish below the cloud in the short-term chart. Bitcoin's off 3% this morning, so really testing this cloud to see whether we fall through. We've got a downside target of 2% on the short-term chart. We've got a new upside target here to $13,000 if we activate that by going higher. So if we move higher than the levels we've seen recently, then we activate that target to the upside. But at the moment, it's a question of whether Bitcoin can hold this support level. S&P 500 index last night went higher again, and Nasdaq also pushed higher, so we're just seeing the markets recovering there. The Dow also higher. These markets up about 1.5% overnight. Russell also looking strong. So the US recovery is occurring, but there's still fear there, and we're seeing that in the futures market. The futures, the S&P future this morning down 0.65%, suggesting the US will go lower. We're really tussling with this cloud at the moment. And the big question is, will we come back and see these lows, or are these lows that we will recover from? Be quite key. We are seeing quite interesting buying spikes here, where it's hit this level on the Nasdaq of about the S&P 500 future. It's hit this level about 25.31, and then it's bounced higher. So we are just seeing that. Nasdaq looks similar, of course. We are just coming back through the cloud on the E-mini short term, and we do have an upside target to 7,000, which is about 7% higher. FTSE 100 is falling below the cloud at the moment, so we are just seeing that lower. This morning it is up 0.21%, but we are bearish below the cloud, and the medium-term chart is still dire. FTSE 250 also dire. By the way, we're seeing downside targets here. This one activated on the FTSE, another 6% lower on the FTSE 250. We've got a downside target here on the medium term of about on the short term of as much as 14% lower. So this is a calamitous fall for the FTSE. Big thing, we are activating these big downside targets. So the UK market doesn't look good at the moment. The DAX is bearish below the cloud as well. Again, downside targets activated, and the medium-term chart looking grim. The Nikkei just starting to wander below the cloud, and you can bet your bottom dollar that they will be watching the Ichimoku chart for the Nikkei. So the Japanese investors will be watching this fact that we're coming through. So this is just looking pretty bad for Japan, and again we've got downside targets potential here, so not looking great. The Hang Seng holding the medium-term trend, but the short-term bearish. Shanghai is now looking pretty bad on the short and medium-term trends. The long-term cloud coming under pressure. Sensex holding up quite well, although still bearish short-term, and the Australian market up, but starting to look worrying on that medium-term chart as well. Brent crude is up this morning. We're at 62.73, but we're still in a clear downtrend for Brent. WTI, the same picture. Just looking at the targets there, we've got Brent target of $60.70. WTI, no clear downside targets on the short-term chart. Go to the 1 minute if you want to get very short-term targets. Nat gas sitting at $2.61. So we have breached this December low level. We seem to be finding a bit of a base here, but we've got to get through the cloud before we could call it that it would go higher. We're seeing the same with copper. Copper actually recovering now through the cloud, and we have got an upside target of some 2.74%. Going straight to gold. Gold is actually turning bullish through the cloud. again, this falling dollar and these policy announcement probably helping the yellow metal, and we are just seeing here a rise through the cloud. So gold looking like it's having paused from this breath and taking a low, it now looks like it's going to start marching up again. 1343 the target. Silver also looking positive to run through the cloud as well. US Treasury yields breaking this 2.8%, so looking strong. Apple looking strong as well on the short term, getting back through the cloud, but a very strong day yesterday, best performer in the Dow, but still bearish below this medium term chart, so interesting to see. We do have an upside target to 190. If we can activate that, that will be 16% higher, but we do have these downside targets some 25% lower hanging over us. Google is still bearish below the cloud, the medium-term chart finding support. Amazon looking pretty bullish on the medium and long term, but still bearish on the short term. Facebook struggling to just break above that 180 level again. So looking bearish in the short term, but medium term holding on to its gains. We do have a downside target here of some 8%. Lots of upside targets on Facebook, but they do seem to be being negated now. Microsoft also bearish below the cloud in the short term, but the long term still looks pretty good. That's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you then.